everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Annette. This is the Kitchen Witch Supernatural Cooking and Tarot Show. Today I am making roasted butternut squash soup. So I've already cut open two small butternut squash, taken the seeds out, and then I brushed about a teaspoon of avocado oil onto each half, and then gently, put a little bit of sea salt and pepper. Not too much. I would say maybe a quarter teaspoon per half of sea salt and a few shakes of ground pepper. We're going to roast this butternut squash at 400 degrees for about an hour or until it's tender, but we're going to roast it face down. So I'm just going to flip these over. Actually, I'm going to move this one up here just so I've got a little bit more room. And then these are going to go right into the oven for about an hour. Okay, I've taken my roasted butternut squash out of the oven. It's going to look like a dark caramely brown. If it looks a little burnt, that is okay. It's supposed to look like this. It's just going to add a lot of flavor to the soup. So while the squash is cooling off enough where we can handle it and scoop the flesh out into our stock pot, I have about 2 tablespoons of butter ready to go here. I'm going to melt it and let it get brown. And then I'm going to add about a quarter to a half a cup of diced sweet onion. If you don't have Vidalia or sweet onions, you can use a regular yellow onion. You can even use half of a shallot chopped up if you like. And then I'm also going to add in some minced garlic, a can of pumpkin puree, and some chopped fresh sage, and a quart or so of vegetable stock. You can also use chicken stock. I choose to use low sodium. And so let me chop all of this up and we're going to put it all together. Okay, I'm not crying, you're crying. I swear to God, I need to get those onion goggles, but I've got my onion chopped up here. It looks up to be about a half a cup, and I do just a rough chop on it because we're going to either put this in the blender or use an immersion blender to puree the soup together at the end. I also have a few leaves of fresh sage chopped up here. It looks like about 2 tablespoons of fresh sage. You can also use dehydrated sage, the kind that comes in the jar, and I would use maybe a teaspoon. And what I'm going to do right now is I am melting 2 tablespoons of butter in the bottom of a heavy stock pot, and I'm going to let this butter get nice and brown. We don't want to burn it, but we want it to be brown. And then I'm going to throw my sage in first, let my sage start getting nice and smelly. Then I'll saute the onions. And then towards the end, before I add the pumpkin puree and the stock, I'm going to add the garlic because garlic can burn very easily. Okay, sorry. So my butter is getting brown here, and it's also starting to get a nice nutty smell to it, so I'm going to add the sage. Okay, just wanted to show you what that looks like. It smells amazing. I'm going to add the onion now. I dropped my temperature back to low to medium, closer to the medium side, and I'm going to, stir and saute these onions. Okay, so once the onions start to look translucent and they're starting to get golden brown, I'm going to add a teaspoon of minced garlic. Okay, once the garlic starts getting fragrant and has a slightly nutty smell, I'm going to add the chicken stock, the pumpkin puree, and the roasted butternut squash. Okay, so I've put my squash, my pumpkin, and my stock into my pot here, I'm going to add about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of additional sea salt, a few twists of fresh ground black pepper, and I'm going to grate a little bit of nutmeg, maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon in here as well. Okay, I've added my additional seasoning. I'm going to give this a quick stir. And I have this over low to medium heat. And then I'm going to add some half and half to this just to give it a little bit of a creamier texture. I actually found a fat-free half and half, and I'm going to use that. I've got some fat in here already from the avocado oil from when we roasted the squash and the butter that we added to saute the sage, onion, and garlic in. Okay, I added 1/4 cup of fat-free half and half. You could also use canned coconut milk, the light coconut milk. I wouldn't use the kind that you would make smoothies with. I would use the canned stuff that you would use in Asian cooking. It just has a richer texture to it. And then I would use just maybe 1/4 cup of canned coconut milk if you choose to do non-dairy. Okay, I've got my immersion blender ready here. I'm going to puree this really well. Alternately, you could dump the contents of your soup into a blender and just puree it in your blender if you want to do it that way if you don't have an immersion blender. Okay, so this is what our soup looks like after you run it through the blender or use an immersion blender and puree it. At this point, you want to taste your soup. So I did sample it. It did need a little bit more salt, so I added about another half a teaspoon of sea salt to it. Because I used unsalted stock and didn't put a whole lot of salt and pepper on the squash before I roasted it. You want to gradually add your salt. You can always add more, but once you put too much in, you're screwed. But this is simmering. It's nice and hot and bubbly. It's ready to serve. Look at this beautiful soup. I garnished it with a little bit of pumpkin and sunflower seed blend. But this is a perfect, easy to make soup on a cold, snowy winter's afternoon. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know down in the comments.